We all face challenges in life. No one's journey is free from obstacles. But what happens when we share our struggles with others? It's natural to seek support, to talk about our pain and frustration. But here's the truth: sometimes telling others your problems does more harm than good. While it may seem like a way to release the weight you're carrying, it can also become a trap, keeping you stuck in negativity. Sometimes the best thing you can do is keep your problems to yourself. When we face difficulties in life, it's natural to want to share our burdens with others. We want to talk about what we're going through, seek comfort, or perhaps even receive advice. However, what many of us fail to realize is that sharing our problems with others can sometimes make our struggles harder, not easier. One of the primary reasons for this is that when we tell others our problems, we open ourselves up to judgment. Judgment is a powerful thing. It can shape how we view ourselves and how we interact with the world. When we share our problems with others, we can't always control how they will perceive us or our situation. While some people may listen with empathy and offer supportive advice, others might jump to conclusions, judge us, or make us feel weak or incapable. Their judgments are often colored by their own experiences, biases, and limitations, which might not align with our reality at all. This can lead to feelings of embarrassment, guilt, or shame. Furthermore, even well-meaning people can inadvertently add to our stress. They may offer solutions or advice that sound good on the surface, but don't actually apply to our situation. This can create confusion, as we may find ourselves trying to follow advice that feels wrong or irrelevant. The result is that we end up questioning ourselves even more, rather than feeling supported. Instead of gaining clarity, we're left with a bigger mess of conflicting opinions and suggestions that only add to our overwhelm. Additionally, the fear of being judged often holds us back from fully expressing ourselves. We become selective in who we share our problems with, which means we may not be able to find the understanding or comfort we need. Sometimes, even if we do confide in someone, there's still an underlying fear that we will be judged for our vulnerability. This fear can prevent us from truly opening up and finding the healing we need. Instead of feeling seen, we may feel exposed, and that exposure can often be more painful than the original problem we were dealing with. The truth is, judgment is inevitable. People will always form opinions based on what they hear or see, whether it's about our actions, our choices, or the struggles we face. But here's the key: when we stop sharing our problems with others, we give ourselves the space to manage our own judgment. We no longer allow the opinions of others to dictate how we feel about ourselves or our situations. Instead of seeking validation from others, we start looking inward for the answers and strength we need. By not sharing our problems, we free ourselves from the cycle of seeking approval or understanding from others. This shift allows us to find confidence in handling our issues privately, without the constant influence of others' perceptions. It also encourages us to be more introspective and thoughtful about how we approach challenges. We stop seeking external validation and instead begin to trust our own judgment and instincts. We begin to recognize that we are the best people to handle our own problems, even if it means facing them alone for a while. Of course, this doesn't mean that we should never ask for help or support. There are times when sharing our struggles with trusted friends or family members is essential. The difference is that when we seek support, we do so with the understanding that we are in control of the situation. We're not looking for approval or sympathy. We're simply reaching out to people who will listen and offer guidance without judgment. The key takeaway is that judgment from others can be a significant burden when we share our problems. It can make us feel small, misunderstood, and confused. By choosing to keep our struggles to ourselves or only share them with those who can offer non-judgmental support, we allow ourselves the freedom to grow, learn, and handle our problems with grace and strength. When we find ourselves in the midst of a personal struggle, it's easy to want to share our problems with others. It's a natural impulse to seek advice, to seek comfort, or to simply be heard. But one thing that many people don't realize is that sharing our problems often leads to unsolicited and irrelevant advice, especially from people who don't fully understand the context or the depth of what we're going through. This type of advice can do more harm than good. It starts with the fact that not everyone has the wisdom or experience to offer the best guidance. While they may be trying to help, their suggestions often come from a place of limited understanding, and this can cause confusion. What they tell you may not apply to your situation, and following their advice can lead to decisions that don't make sense for your life. For instance, someone might tell you to take a certain action, thinking it will resolve your issue, when in reality, that advice could make things worse or just not work at all. The challenge lies in the fact that people don't always take the time to understand your problem. They may hear a snippet of your situation and think they know the solution. However, they don't fully grasp the intricacies of your life, your emotions, or the consequences of the decisions you face. This leads to them offering advice that is either too simplistic or completely out of touch with what you need. For example, someone might tell you to just get over it or move on, when your struggle is far deeper than that. Such advice, while perhaps intended to be helpful, can feel dismissive and hurtful because it ignores the complexity of your experience. Moreover, when we share our problems, we often don't realize how much people's judgments and opinions can affect our decision-making process. Once advice is given, we might feel pressured to act on it, even if we don't feel comfortable with it. The fear of disappointing others or not following their guidance can lead us to make decisions we're not ready for. This can create an internal conflict where we question our own judgment and begin to second-guess the way we're handling things. This sense of doubt can prevent us from trusting ourselves and taking the necessary steps we need to move forward with confidence. Another issue that arises from receiving unsolicited advice is that it can divert our focus. When you're struggling with a problem, the last thing you need is a dozen different opinions telling you what to do. It adds noise to your situation and takes you away from the clarity and focus you need to solve the problem in your own way. Having too many voices in your head can drown out your own instincts and inner wisdom. Instead of being able to think clearly and critically, you might find yourself overwhelmed with so much advice that you become paralyzed by indecision. Additionally, when we share our problems with others, we might inadvertently open ourselves up to judgments that we're not prepared for. People's advice is often influenced by their own biases, experiences, and even insecurities. What they say may be based on their own limited understanding of life, or may stem from a desire to fix things for you because they think they know what's best. This can create a feeling of vulnerability that goes beyond just sharing a problem. It opens the door to receiving feedback that may not be in your best interest, or could make you feel even more misunderstood. The other side of this is that advice is not always practical. People may offer solutions that sound good in theory, but are difficult or impossible to implement. They might suggest that you change something drastic in your life, not understanding the consequences of such changes. What works for one person may not work for another, and just because advice works in one scenario doesn't mean it's the right path for your situation. What's crucial here is the understanding that the best solutions often come from within. While it's important to have trusted friends or family members you can turn to for support, it's equally important to remember that the advice others offer should not be taken as a one-size-fits-all solution. It's up to you to assess whether that advice truly fits with your needs, your values, and your circumstances. It's important to filter out the noise and focus on what aligns with your own sense of self and your goals. Sometimes, the best advice is simply to give yourself time and space to process your challenges, to reflect on what feels right for you, and to trust your own inner wisdom to guide you through. Ultimately, while sharing your problems may feel like a way to get help, it often results in receiving advice that may be unsolicited, irrelevant, or out of touch with your reality. This advice can cause confusion, self-doubt, and unnecessary pressure, taking you further away from the solutions that you truly need. Therefore, it's important to be selective about who you open up to and how much you share. The most valuable advice comes from those who listen without judgment and who understand the complexity of your situation. In many cases, the best person to give advice to yourself is, well, yourself. When we face personal difficulties or challenges, one of the first things we often do is seek support from others. We want to talk about what we're going through, to share the weight we're carrying, and to receive comfort from those who care about us. While this can be a helpful way to cope, there is a significant reason why sometimes it's better to keep our problems to ourselves. Everyone is fighting their own battles. We live in a world where appearances can be deceiving. We look at others and assume that their lives are easier or more stable than ours. We see their success, their happiness, and we think they have it all together. But the truth is, everyone has their own struggles, their own hardships, and their own inner battles. No one is immune to life's challenges. Just because someone seems to have their life in order doesn't mean they aren't dealing with problems behind the scenes. In fact, they may be dealing with something much deeper than what appears on the surface. When you share your problems with others, you might unknowingly add to their emotional burden. People, no matter how much they care about you, have their own lives, their own issues to deal with. They are not always in the best place emotionally or mentally to carry your troubles as well. While they might listen and offer advice, they may not be able to offer the level of support you're hoping for because they themselves are struggling with their own personal battles. Sometimes they may not even have the capacity to give you the emotional energy you need because they are just trying to get through their own challenges. Furthermore, the emotional capacity of those around us can be limited. Everyone has a threshold for how much emotional weight they can handle at any given time. When we share our struggles, especially with people who are already carrying their own burdens, it can unintentionally create a sense of overwhelm or even strain the relationship. The person you're confiding in might feel helpless or burdened, unable to provide the support you need because they are already stretched thin themselves. This can create tension and frustration, both for you and the person you're sharing with. Moreover, there's the issue of empathy. While many people genuinely want to help, it can be difficult for someone to fully empathize with your situation if they haven't experienced something similar. Empathy requires understanding, and when people have not gone through the same types of challenges you are facing, it's harder for them to offer truly meaningful advice or support. They may try, but their advice may miss the mark because they don't fully understand what it feels like to be in your shoes. This can lead to frustration for both parties. You feel misunderstood, and they feel helpless because they want to help but can't relate to what you're going through. In addition, there's the risk that when you share your problems, you end up feeling isolated even more. When you talk about your struggles with someone, you are putting yourself in a vulnerable position. You're revealing your inner fears, your doubts, your weaknesses. But what happens if the person you confide in doesn't respond in the way you hoped? Maybe they're distracted or don't give you the kind of support you need. This can leave you feeling even more alone, and you may start questioning whether it's worth sharing your problems with anyone at all. The isolation that comes from being vulnerable without receiving the support you expected can be painful. On top of that, sharing your problems with others can create a sense of dependence. You might begin to rely on others to help you cope with every challenge that arises. This can be dangerous because it prevents you from building your own inner strength. When you depend on others for emotional support all the time, you start to lose the ability to manage your own feelings and problems. You may begin to feel like you can't handle things on your own. This dependency can also affect your self-esteem and self-confidence, making you feel incapable of managing your life without external support. The truth is, dealing with your own problems in private often leads to greater personal growth. When you face challenges alone, you are forced to develop your own coping mechanisms, to learn how to navigate difficult situations, and to trust in your ability to overcome obstacles. This builds resilience, self-reliance, and confidence. You begin to understand that you don't need to burden others with your problems to find solutions. You have the strength within you to handle whatever life throws your way. Another reason to keep your problems to yourself is that it can help you maintain healthier relationships. When we constantly turn to others for emotional support, we run the risk of draining the relationship. Friends and loved ones want to be there for us, but they also need to have the space to focus on their own issues. If you share everything with them, it can create an imbalance where the relationship becomes centered around your struggles, rather than being a mutual exchange of support and care. It's important to recognize that everyone has their own struggles. People have their own emotional weight to carry, and sometimes it's better to keep your problems to yourself. This doesn't mean you should never share your struggles or seek support. It simply means that before you burden others, you should take into account whether they are in a position to help or if they are dealing with their own challenges. The better we understand the capacity of others to offer support, the more thoughtful we can be in how and when we share our struggles. Sometimes facing our problems alone is the best way to grow, learn, and emerge stronger. Keeping your problems private can be a powerful way to build resilience and inner strength. Life doesn't always allow us the luxury of sharing our struggles with others. Sometimes we face challenges that are deeply personal or situations where others cannot offer the support we need. In those moments, the only person we have to rely on is ourselves. Choosing to face our problems in private doesn't mean we are weak or unable to ask for help. Rather, it means we are strengthening ourselves to handle life's difficulties with grace and courage. When we keep our problems to ourselves, we are forced to dig deeper within ourselves. It's easy to seek advice or share our frustrations with others when things get tough, but the true growth comes from learning how to manage those difficulties on our own. It's through this process that we develop emotional intelligence, resilience, and self-awareness. We learn how to navigate our challenges, not by depending on external sources, but by trusting our own instincts and judgment. Building resilience through privacy also means developing the mental toughness to keep moving forward in the face of adversity. It's one thing to receive support, but it's another to push through without expecting anyone else to fix your problems. When we rely on others to carry our emotional burdens, we can start to feel like we're not capable of handling life's challenges on our own. But when we choose to face difficulties in private, we learn that we are far more capable than we ever thought possible. Resilience isn't just about surviving difficult moments. It's about thriving in the face of those moments. When you keep your struggles to yourself, you build the strength to persevere through hard times without allowing them to define you. You learn to adapt, to find creative solutions, and to tap into a well of inner power that you didn't even know you had. It's in the silence, in the moments when no one is watching, that we can develop the most profound sense of strength. We become our own biggest supporters, our own motivators, and our own champions. Additionally, when we handle our problems privately, we avoid the trap of seeking validation from others. Often, when we share our struggles, we hope for reassurance, for someone to tell us that everything will be okay. However, this external validation can sometimes hold us back. We may become too focused on other people's opinions and lose sight of what's best for us. By dealing with our issues privately, we learn to validate ourselves. We begin to trust our decisions and actions without needing external confirmation. This self-reliance strengthens our confidence and helps us feel more secure in our choices. Furthermore, keeping your problems private allows you to reflect more deeply on the situation. When we share our problems, we often speak from a place of heightened emotion, which can cloud our judgment. We might talk about the situation in a way that emphasizes the negative aspects, or we might seek advice without fully processing our own thoughts. By handling things privately, we give ourselves the space to reflect, to consider all aspects of the problem, and to approach it with a clearer, more level-headed mindset. We can evaluate what's truly important, how we can move forward, and what lessons can be learned from the experience. Sometimes the most significant growth comes from experiencing challenges alone, when no one is there to offer advice or a shoulder to lean on. We are forced to look within ourselves for the answers. This process helps us recognize the strengths and abilities we didn't know we had. It allows us to develop problem-solving skills, coping mechanisms, and emotional tools that we can carry with us for the rest of our lives. The more we handle situations on our own, the more confident we become in our ability to face future challenges. There's also an element of peace that comes from keeping our problems private. When we share our struggles with others, we often invite their opinions, judgments, and emotions into the situation. While some may offer empathy and support, others may not fully understand, and their responses might create additional stress. By choosing to keep our problems to ourselves, we maintain control over the situation and preserve our emotional peace. We are not subject to the well-meaning but sometimes unhelpful comments of others. We can focus on finding solutions without the distractions of external noise. Ultimately, choosing to keep our problems private is about owning our journey. It's about taking responsibility for our emotions, our actions, and our responses. When we face our problems alone, we are no longer waiting for someone else to fix things for us. We are taking charge of our own lives.